Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Communications and Conversations. Thank you for tuning in to us on Podbean, Amazon Music, iTunes. Got a whole bunch of things that we're on there. And thank you for tuning into this show. And guess what? I think we're going to get some people riled up on the show today. I'm actually excited for it. Ha ha ha. What? I know, you're kind of like, oh, John, now what? And that's just my family saying that. No, I think we're going to get a little bit riled up today. And judging by the title of the show, are we dealing with the right generation? Generation and radios. That's what the topic was called, generation and radios. And there's a reason it's called generation radios, because we are going to take a look at a correlation that I believe that numerous people do not think about. And when they don't think about that, I think it creates issues. It creates problems. So there's going to be a few opinions in today's episode. I'm not going to hide or deny that in any way, shape, or form, because I think the opinion aspect of it is something important that we're doing. Now, I'm going to put in the context of the show. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit to a degree about all radio services, but we are going to kind of to a degree reside in the amateur realm a little bit on there. And like I said, this is meant to be a discussion. I know some people are going to get riled up. I gave that precursor, okay? It's not a clickbait thing. It's like, warning, listener or viewer discretion is advised, right? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here. And there's a correlation. You'll see it, but generations and radios, that's the best big main topic on there. Now, before we get into today's show, we'd like to go ahead and do two things. One, we'd like to go ahead and thank our sponsor, JJK Communications. JJK Communications is a great sponsor of Communications and Conversations. They give us the money for the tools, the toys, everything that we have on here in this show to be able to bring the show to you without charging you any fee. We don't do any sort of Patreon. We don't buy me a coffee. We don't ask for donations. We don't do anything like that whatsoever. We go ahead and support. We get support, I should say, by JJK Communications. Now, I want to go ahead and, I guess, preface something on there that while they are their sponsor, today's topic, like I said, rides on this realm of like, well, it's sort of opinionated, but it's not, the express views of the company or anything, but it does present, I should say, some data. So that's what I just want to preface it on there. We thank JJK Communications. If you have any questions about them, feel free to go ahead and get a hold of them, jjkcom.com. That's right, www.jjkcom.com. You can go on there. They got some great specials coming up in November here, as well as December for the Christmas time. GMRS radios, FRS radios, LMR radios. A lot of people are going and learning the advantages of LMR radios to be like, hey, guess what? I'm not just restricted with the GMRS radio to be able to be on GMRS bands. I can take a radio or get an LMR radio or a radio designed and type accepted for all the different bands that are out there. Whether you want to talk about amateur, FRS, GMRS, those kind of things, you can find radios that cover all those bases. And JJK Communications can help with your selection. Reach out to them today. Go to their website, shoot them an email, and sales@jjkcom.com if you have questions. The staff is more than willing to help you in every single way, shape, or form. Combined experience of over 30 years, that's right, over 30 years comes to you from JJK Communications. So once again, we thank you very much for your sponsorship on there. Now let's go back. We're talking about today's shows. And talking about today's show is an interesting concept. And the reason I say it's an interesting concept is because it deals with something that the people in the radio hobby, let's just put it that way, people in the radio hobby, I don't think really think about. I think we've kind of, this is the opinion, I should flash it on the screen there. It's like an opinion coming up here. But we think it's status quo, right? We think it's status quo. So when we're in the radio hobby, whether we're talking about amateur, whether we're talking about GMRS, FRS, whether we're talking about CB radio, whatever the case may be, when we're talking in the hobby aspect, or general communications in general, like, MERS, just day in and day out. What we're not doing is we're not taking a look of our sample audience, people. I guess that's the easy way to put it. And what I guess to further expand on that, without getting too deep into the show here, to help people understand, is that we think the same things and principles that we're doing 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago for the hobby is still being worked on or working today. And that's wrong. And I'm going to show you evidence here. Okay, I'm going to show you evidence hands down that this is wrong. And some of you, once again, you're going to look at this information presented today and you're going to say, no, that's not correct. Now, I also pulled this topic from personal education that I've taken, where we talk about what we talk about today. And I hear like all these other, and I'll give you a reference because it this whole subject started off about a club that I'm aware of that now has opened up, and I think it's a great deal. I think it's a great idea, but this club has opened up, and now they're including GMRS operators into their organization instead of just being an organization of amateur radio operators. And in this case, GMRS is sort of like a gateway drug. Now, I'm not just talking about GMRS today. I'm not just talking about amateur. We're going up to that 10,000-foot view. And what I mean by this is that clubs that are opening up that concept are growing, and the hobby is growing when you stop using the cookie cutter recipe. All right. The airing of this show here is on, Friday the 15th. Okay. Yep. Friday the 15th. I had to check my date there. Saturday the 15th. Sorry. Saturday the 15th. But we're getting close to the holidays. And the joke I was going to make was that the only good thing for cookie cutter recipes is holiday cookies, not what we're doing in the amateur radio world. And I'm not going to say any organizations or anything like that, but there may be some organizations that have letters in their name that are, in theory, using this cookie cutter recipe because it worked before, it's got to work again. And if we take that one step further, you look at the elected officials of said maybe organization, and they are applying, well, it worked before, let's work it again. And that, no offense, is kind of stupid. Okay? It's kind of stupid. And what I'm going to make a reference to here is I'm going to make it, look at your vehicles out in the world today, right? Look at your vehicles. Go pull up a video of a vehicle. If you have your own vehicle, go take a look at your own vehicle. If for some reason you're watching this and you don't have your own vehicle, go look at a neighbor's vehicle. Next time you're out and about, see the vehicles. The vehicles have changed, right? We're not dealing with the Ford Model T, folks, anymore, right? And as vehicles have changed, we have adopted things. We've done things. So, John, get to the point. What is this adoption that you're talking about? What is this change? And it deals with the generation of people. We are not applying things to the generation of people. Now, I see this in EMS, right? I see this big time in EMS when I go ahead and I start talking about people, and it's kind of like one of those deals where it's like the joke is, who is the best volunteer, let's say in EMS today, or public safety, volunteer organizations. I'm not talking about career departments or anything like that. Who is the best for these organizations? And the answer is you know who the best volunteer for organizations are? And not, you know what, not even public safety. Let's go ahead and just say in general organizations. The best volunteer for today's organization is the volunteers of yesterday. So the best volunteer of today is the volunteer from yesterday. And that's gonna hit pretty hard here when we think about it, when we show you these things. So let's jump into it. So once again, what are we doing? So let's take a look at the hobby. And we're going to start out with when the hobby was sort of growing and there was a lot of flourishment, and we dealt with the generation of the baby boomers. Now, how does this play to radio, John? Explain it. Well, let's understand what a baby boomer is, right? So they were the generation that was born from 1946 to 1964. Biggest things about them: no technology. They don't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. You watch, like, they had old time radio. Like, if you were born in this era, you grew up listening to radio shows, and those radio shows had the content thing. As a matter of fact, some of these people adapted to television, right? They learned about television. They started to have television when they were older, right? Depending on when they were born. And they were more in-person social interactions. These are the people that want to go to the local coffee cups or the coffee store, right? Or the restaurant, and have breakfast in the morning, to the breakfast with friends and stuff like that. That is what this generation was. And if you take a look at it, the technology of radios was doing that. They had more social interaction. They talked about rag chewing. They maybe did contests on there, but they fixed their own stuff, but they had a social interaction. They didn't have the internet. They didn't really per se have TV like we have TV today, right? There wasn't one cable that comes into your house and gives you 100 channels, or hell, for that matter, these days, one cable that comes in your house and you can select what you want. It doesn't even have channels anymore, right? Streaming services. They didn't have any of that. They wanted to talk to people, and they did that because they wanted a direct connection. Now, this organization I'm talking about really kind of catered to them, because that was the core of it. Now, granted, it may have been started, the organization may have been started before that, but it really kind of held on to that concept, right? They had magazines, they had publications that were sent to you, that you actually read a magazine. And guess what? When you did that, that's what happened in those things, and that's when it kind of started to take things out and take things away from it all. Alrighty? That is the baby boomers. Now, let's finish what we're talking about, and I'm gonna kind of show you how all this gets together. So, after the baby boomers, we came into Generation X. I recently heard some Generation Next. I mean, that was there. So that was like the 1965, right, all the way to the 1980s. Now, this was a generation that was really adaptable to change. And if you think of that, how it adapted to change, I mean, look what happened in the 60s and the 70s and just into the 80s. We started to develop more technology, right? We started to do things that really changed the world, okay? Lots of different things happen, wars, conflicts, those kind of things. They started to adapt to change. They started to think, hey, we're able to do this. We can kind of throw and handle whatever's thrown to us, all right? But they valued autonomy. That's a big thing with this generation. And once again, we'll talk about how it plays into the amateur radio hobby and like GMRs and stuff in a minute. But it valued autonomy. So it valued this generation, values being able to do things on their own. They didn't have to go to social circles. They didn't have to have coffee meetups and stuff like that. They were okay sitting at home doing things on their own while they were progressing and doing things. Now, this is interesting because if we take a look at the world of amateur radio, we started to see a change started to happen at this point. While the radios used to be big, huge tubes and everything like that, what we started to do is we started to see things shrinking down, and we started to see semiconductors. We started to see, once again, change start to happen and grow, okay? This really added things into this whole mix of things of like, hey, they can do this. We can do this, okay? I'll give you a good example. Atari was coming out at this time, ColecoVision. What's this thing? Hey, I can now sit at home and play a video game, right? By myself. That's the autonomy part. Or I can go out and I can do this by myself if I want to do. That's the autonomy part. And that plays in to an important thing when it comes to dealing with Generation X and radios. We'll get to that in a minute here. So now we had Gen Y come on, also known as the millennials. So we're talking 1980 to 1994. Now, these are people that grew up in technology. They started to see the advancements of things of technology. They went from the A-track to the cassette to the CD. All right. They started to see this thing kind of sort of called the internet, but not really, but modems. And what's this modem? I hook a telephone to my computer. A computer? What the hell's a computer? Right? You started to see these kind of things start to happen. But Generation Y, millennials, are known for purpose-driven activities and definition. They don't necessarily want to do it by their own. They maybe want to do it with a group, but they want to have a purpose. They want to have a focus. Now, that plays into an important part of what happened in the amateur radio world. And I do want to say this agency, I don't want to say agency because that's just being dishonest to actual agencies. This organization, this lobbying group, went and started to still understand, have the thing, okay, baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, they were kind of adapting to it. But we saw some things start to happen that even like the FCC did. And known for purpose-driven things, what happened in that time? Well, we dropped the code requirement, right? During this time, the code requirement dropped. So we start to see people purposely driven. They're getting in it. They want to do something. They want to start at A and end at Z with the group, by themselves, whatever. That's where Generation Y comes into play. Now, let's talk about Generation Z. Now, Generation Z, 1997 to 2012. Now, these people grew up in the era of the constant internet. The internet was there always, right? By 1997, you could easily get dial-up internet out to everybody on there, right? You could. I mean, I remember 1997 when I was going to specialized school and stuff like that in there, wanted to keep in touch with my parents. Well, I would go ahead and I'd hop on and do AOL, right? That was it, because where I was going for specialized classes, I had an AOL number I can dial into. Well, that was fine. When I was staying at a hotel, plugged in, people don't even know what those tones are anymore. But then you were able to do it. We were able to communicate. So we had internet access to us. We had chat rooms. We had, you've got mail, right? We've had all that. They are also considered tech savvy. And if we really start to think about all this, really what was happening? Well, now we're definitely into semiconductor radios. Now we are seeing this technology part on there. Generation Y, the end of Gen Y, the beginning of Gen Z, really saw that advance in technology where radios were becoming smaller. The technology was getting rid of tubes. There was still tube stuff out there, but it was really getting rid of tubes. It was all semiconductor, microchips, all that kind of stuff out there. But they were considered tech savvy. So these people, they were not afraid to use technology. Not saying that Generation Y wasn't, but Generation Y had different technology. But now Gen Zs were all in technology. Right at this time, the MP3 was becoming popular and stuff. All these different things that technology was just starting to run, and that's what it was, and it was running pretty fast. Now, the final one we're going to talk about here is Gen A. And now Gen A is 2010, roughly, through 2025. Now, if you go back here, you're like, well, John, that's 2012, the end of it, but you're saying 2020 or 2010. Yeah, because Gen Z and Gen A kind of overlapped a little bit in there. They did, because Gen Z, once again, they had constant internet, they had technology, they were tech savvy, but now especially, 2010 is when it started, because there was enough advancements and changes in technology. Everybody had a cell phone, or you could easily get a cell phone, and they were small, they were tiny little devices, right? So the Gen A's are digital natives. They do not know what a cassette tape really was. They do not know what a CD was. A track, good God, don't even do that. And some only know vinyl because they're bringing vinyl back. But they're always connected. They're always connected. And what does that always connected mean? Well, it means this. It means they always got one of these. They got a tablet, they got a phone, they got something in their hand that they can tap, do something, intergage with this. And then you're always engaged with it, right? You don't see these people necessarily going to the coffee shop to sit with their friend and talk about the world news or whatever. No, you see these people going to the coffee shop with their friends, and all four of them are sitting around the table and they're, surfing on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those things, or like I go ahead and joke around, the Book of Face or the Tic Tac or the graham cracker, the instant graham cracker, right? I just joke around like that with my kids, but they're always connected because guess what? My kids are Gen A's. Now, what does this all have to do, right? What, John, what is the purpose of this? Besides going ahead and some sort of psychology episode, which has nothing to do with radio. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Here's what I'm talking about. I've heard different tubers go ahead and express on how to grow your club, to how you do this. And what I'm going to tell you is there are correlations that I'm going to show you here that really, really work it. And I'm going to give you some examples here. Okay, and now these are general examples, right? An example is a general sampling of something. It doesn't mean that's hard and fast, it's in stone. So I don't want you to be like, well, John said this. No, it's not, right? It's the average person. We'll go ahead and say it that way. Now, I will go and produce the first one here, which let's say we are going to have we'll use field day. Let's use field day, all righty? So let's use field day and let's go back through all of them. So field day for the baby boomer. They're going to be the ones that are going to want to be talking on the radio. They're going to be the ones that are maybe doing the CW King. They're not necessarily going to be the digital mode people. Some might, but for the most part, they're the ones that are going to want to be on the radio, talking with that mic, hitting that CW key, okay, on there and pounding it out and doing that for a direct social interaction. All righty. The Gen Xers. The Gen Xers are going to be the ones that are going to be at the field day going, you know what? I could do some voice. I could do CW. Maybe I don't do CW. You know, maybe I can. You know, or hey, FT8 or RTTY. Yeah, I can. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, but okay, we're going to do this. Okay. Well, cool. Sign me up for this shift, right? During field day. Give me a 4-hour block and I'm going to want to do voice for that 4-hour block. Or maybe 2 of that 4-hour block is going to be voice and the other 2 is going to be RTTY. They're adaptable to change, but they like to do stuff on their own. Okay? The Gen Ys now. Okay? What is their goal? They're going to be sitting down at field day. They're going to be like, okay, here's what it is. We got to make as many contacts as we can. What is the best way we're going to make contacts on there? Let's find out the best way to do this, and let's do this. And they're going to be like, hey, do we do it on FTA? Do we do RTTY? Do we do it CW? Hey, wait, we got a CW program here, right? We can do it that way, but we got to make as many contacts as we can within that time period. We're talking about Gen Zs. Gen Zs are like, yeah, man, let's do FTA. Cool. You know, let's do FTA. Let's do CW with the keyboard. But you know what? Here's the deal. Why are we using paper logs, man? Let's go ahead and use a net logger. Let's use some sort of program we can do logging and everything like that on there. Okay? And then finally, the Gen Alphas, guess what they're going to do? They're going to come in and they're going to be like, cool, well, you know what? I got a Raspberry Pi, and we can run the Raspberry Pi, and I got a little portable display with it. And while we're doing this portable display and stuff, we can go ahead and run FT8 on that if we want to. But then also, too, is, wait, here's a cool idea. While we're doing this, let's live stream on social media what we're doing to get more people in there. Let's get likes. Okay, hey, wait a minute here. I got the camera. Let's do this. Let's post this to our social media page or Instagram or whatever to get more people to see that. Now, most of you just said, Jesus, John, you hit that right on the head. And other people are going to be arguing, saying, that's not correct, John. Okay, once again, sampling of the people. You may or may not see that. And you may see the differences of the people that are on the cusps, right? People that are on the cusps. You know, if they're within a couple years of that change from like Gen X to Y or Y to Z or Y Z to A or that kind of thing, you may see a little bit of both characteristics ride in that thing. So that's one way to do it. Now, let's take another example. And the example I'm going to use is now a club project. So let's say, for an example, you have decided that as a club project, you want to take on building an APRS node. Okay? It was a club project I was involved in, but we're going to take on this club project of building an APRS node. So let's start back with the baby boomers. And I was, once again, sampling of people. They're going to be like, well, what is APRS? Like, how can we use it? Is this going to be valuable to me? Okay. Some may like it. They're there, but like, okay, so like we just bacon out that kind of thing. So they're going to be probably some will do it right in the name of the hobby, but there might be some apprehension to do it, right? Or data, digital is the devil, that kind of thing. That may happen. Now, the Gen Xers are going to be like, oh, cool. Okay, let's do this. Like, okay, so I get the kit here and let me start reading the directions here and stuff. Okay, we're going to do this. Okay. We'll take the teacher, the instructor, the presenter, and like, okay, this, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this here and stuff. Okay, next step is step 5 here. Oh, they're still in step 2. Okay. All right. Well, all right. I'll slow down here, but okay, I'm on 5 here. They're going to do that. They have that autonomy, right? They want to do it by themselves, maybe more so than anything else. Gen Ys, okay, millennials, right? They're like, cool, this is great. APRS is really kind of cool. Ultimately, we got to get and put this kit together and stuff, and that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to get it on there, and then we can do applications with it. But, let's get through this meeting. Let's get through this kit building session, and then we can be done. Gen Z is going to be like, oh, this is so cool. Like, alrighty, cool. Like, I can easily go and take this and put this here. I could use it here. I can get a Raspberry Pi. I can connect it here. I could do this. And, actually, if we got another one of these, I can do this here. And how can I explain it more? And, really, it's a really cool project to use and everything. You got your Gen Alphas. Gen Alphas are going to be like, hey, man, I'm building this kit, cool and everything. Well, why don't I take some pictures to show that I'm building the kit? All right, this is going to be cool right here. Okay, cool. All right. We're at step 2. Oh, cool. Okay, we're putting this on there. They're snapping pictures and they're posting, right? How many have seen this? How many have seen this? Now, here's where it comes into context of like today's episode. Is you're seeing this, but what do we do with it? Now that you're aware of it, what do we do with it? And here's where this is going to come in to support the hobby. Okay. First of all, we need to stop looking at numbers. Okay. We look at numbers. Like, I know it's a metric to grade on there, but really, if we want to take a look at numbers, they're not doing a good job, the organization. Okay. My state, the numbers are down from my understanding, from what I've been told from different sources. I guess I haven't checked that out, so I don't want to say that, but it's like, okay, leadership, what are you doing? Right. And in that case, if we take a look at there, are we doing things that are tapping the boomers, the X's, the Y's, the Z's, and the A's? That's what you need to ask yourself. All right. When I've taught classes, okay, and I'm coming from adult education type classes, when I've taught classes on there, that's what you have to adapt for. You have to adapt for the generational aspects of these people. A baby boomer, that is going to learn different than an X, which is going to learn different than a Y, which is going to learn different than a Z, which is going to learn different than an A. Okay? So when you have these things, that's when you need to kind of focus and put them all together. Now, as I said, this is kind of something to help you come to do it. Because like I said, I started to see it. I started to sit back and I started to say like, okay, John, why are we disengaging? Why do we have some people that want to do things and then don't want to do things? Okay. One last quick thing I'll go through. Your baby boomers. Those are going to probably be your more HFer people. Those are going to be the people that don't want to necessarily use like digital voice and those kind of things like that on there. They're going to want to do CW. They're going to want to do just single sideband voice. All right. Maybe AM even. Your Gen Xers. Your Gen Xers are going to be like, okay, yeah, cool. I'll play in single sideband. Yeah, I'll play in FM. Yeah, okay. Cool, you want to try out some digital stuff? Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, I guess we'll try out digital stuff on there. But they're going to be okay with what they do, right? They're going to be like, I only like FM. I'm going to go do FM. I only like HF. I'm going to go do HF. I only like digital. I'm going to do digital. Okay. Gen Ys. Okay, cool. What are we doing here? Are we contesting or are we just having fun? Are we drag chewing? Give me some define parameters. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll play with Packet. I'll play with APRS. I'll do those things. I'll do RTTY. I'll do FT8. Cool. All right. Well, the purpose FT8. Okay, cool. Make contacts with people. Cool. Great. Fine. Okay. Then you have like the tech savvy people. Once again, here, these are the people that are going to be in looking at that hobby. They're going to be like, okay, how can I develop some technology? Right? Can I maybe write some code and, make this a little bit better, do this kind of thing, right? Like, hey, I want to play with more technology. They're going to be ones that maybe are more apt to do, digital voice, to do FTA, to do those things. Yeah, they might like some CW, but they're going to want to go ahead and learn how to advance CW maybe a little bit more, makes single sideband better. These might be the people like, you know what, you got single sideband, but now if we put it through a graphic equalizer and we put it through this and this and this, those are those kind of people. And now you have the Gen A's. The Gen A's are like, if it ain't connected to a computer, man, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be doing that kind of thing. So I want this. I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to do digital voice with using an app on my phone. I want to be able to plug something into my phone or Bluetooth it to do there. Oh, radio? Cool. I want to program it. I got to program it with Bluetooth. I got to program it with something on my phone. I got to be able to do this and this and this. Now, once again, why do I bring up all this stuff? Well, I bring up all this stuff because it really plays a part into what your club is going to have to do. What your club is going to have to do to keep it alive, to keep things interested. You just saw just general operating examples, principles on there of how they want to do that. And the thing is a club's going to have to grow. And as your club's going to grow, that's what's going to go and make things a lot better. But when you're doing these activities, you got to start to dig into these things and see how it can relate. And let me tell you, they're all topics out there can be adjusted or adapted to the different generations on there to make it fun. So, alrighty, clock on the wall showing over 30 minutes. I hope this helped. I really did. I really did. Hope it didn't upset too many people. But, I mean, seriously, take this down, save it in your episode thing, do what you got to do on it, and I think you can start to see, go to your next club meeting or event, man, Hamfest even, you're going to see that. You're going to see these things real there, and being able to adapt is what's going to go ahead and save you. So until then, everybody, take care, stay safe, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to catch you on the radio sometime. How about that? Take care, everybody.